goodness.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Short Sisters Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy, and this is my co-host, Ellen.
Ladies.
We're so glad you're here with us today. Today's dessert, Ellen made. And
Yes,
so we're going to
ma'am.
let her tell us a little about it, and then we'll try it and give our review on it. And then after that, Ellen and I are going to talk about what it was like growing up in our home and dating,
Mhm.
and then how we eventually met our husband.
Yes. I am
Which
looking I'm looking forward to sharing that with
I'm very
y'all.
excited.
So these are snickerdoodle cookies, and this is actually my family's favorite dessert that I make. And in fact, a lot of times if I ask my family, what dessert do you want me to make? It's either going to be honey bun cake or mom's snickerdoodle cookies. But actually, ladies, I found this recipe on Pinterest, and I will share this recipe with everybody on our page. Very simple recipe, and it's foolproof. It's easy, and I love making them. So snickerdoodle cookies, you can't go wrong with them. And in this particular recipe, they tell me to cook it at 11 minutes to get that moist cookie. I don't know. As long as it's cooked.
It's moist and delicious. And I just realized we brought the entire pan of cookies in here, and this might be Jason's favorite cookie.
Uh-oh. Well, it was funny, y'all, because I took the lid off of my pan, and her baby saw a plate full of cookies, and she stood there and was just looking at Kathy like, "Can I please have a cookie?" So we gave her a cookie, so she's in the other room eating a cookie. So,
Yep.
mhm.
And her daddy's going to be watching her eat that snickerdoodle, wishing he had it. It's very good.
We probably should save some for our husbands, but I don't
do
know.
love how it's moist. It is moist. It's a perfect snickerdoodle cookie.
Well, thank you. I love making it. It's one of my family's favorite things that I'm for me to make. So, anyways, excuse me as I chew my cookie here.
It's fine. Maybe in the future. We're learning, guys. Be patient. I'll let you talk about it, and then I'll chew it and stop so that I can talk while you're enjoying the dessert.
We're still learning this. I can't help it. These are my favorite cookies that I make. So
Anyway.
I've been eyeing them. And then actually when I was baking them, my oldest was like, "Who are those for, Mom?" I said, "It's for my podcast." He goes, "Oh." So I left the boys a bag of cookies at home for them to eat. So anyways.
Excuse
Sorry,
us
y'all.
while we're like chewing with cookies.
All
Anyway.
right.
Well, so Ellen.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to put that down.
Thank you for this delicious cookie.
You're very welcome.
It's perfect. Now on to more exciting things.
Mm-hmm. Let me take a sip.
Tell us what kind of home life culture did you grow up in as far as like dating? Like what were the rules? What were the you can't do this? And then piggyback off that by telling us how you met your husband, Chad.
So, I'm Filipino, and my parents are both immigrants from the Philippines. My dad became a citizen after he served in the United States Coast Guard, and then mom came over here as a nursing student, and did the rest of her nursing residency here in Galveston. That's where her and my dad actually met. So I'm coming from an Asian culture that's very strict. Asian culture is strict when it comes to dating. In fact, just growing up in my household, I was the oldest of two kids. My brother and I we're literally almost 9 years apart in age. And so for the longest time, I was the only child. So I'm the only girl. And so when it came to dating or even trying to talk to my parents about boys and, just having those different questions, it was just not a subject that I was allowed to talk about. Basically, my parents' feelings were that I was not allowed to date. It was pretty strict. I had a curfew, um, which a lot of times, even if I went out with my friends, I had a very early curfew. My parents had to know who I was hanging out with, who was going to be at my friend's house. You know, they had to know, they had to be comfortable with the parents. My parents did not allow me to really spend the night at anybody's houses. They were very protective of me. The only person that I could really spend the night, like just even staying over with, was my cousins and my best friend Kelly. Those were the only two people that I really was allowed to go and spend the night over at. So you can imagine what it was like for me dating. I mean, boys were allowed to call me at home, allowed to talk to them on the phone and then see them at school. But as far as like dating was a concern, I was not allowed to do that. That was not a thing that was talked about in my household. I was not allowed to date till I was out of high school. So insert my husband. Now, I did have boyfriends. My parents did not know about these boyfriends.
Dad, if you're listening,
I love you, Daddy. He probably won't get on this, but bless his heart, he's still maneuvering through Facebook and his new phone. We just got him to switch from a flip phone to an iPhone, and he's had it for 2 years now, and he still is calling me and going, "Hey, baby, I don't know how to do." So he has to come over in fact, he was over at my house yesterday because he did something with his email. So Chad had to help him. Anyways, so I did have boyfriends, but I really just saw them at school. Now, if I was with some of my friends and we just happened to be at the mall or whatever, then we'd hang out there.
right.
Again, love you, Daddy. Anyways, so when I met my husband, so my husband is 2 years older than me, and he was a junior and I was a freshman. And we went to a small private school in Bel Air, Texas. And so the classes were not very big. So a lot of kids knew everybody. And I'm trying to think, God, it's been a minute. I've known my husband for now, including being married and dating, like 35 years. I met him when I was 14. And actually, I remember he came to the school in the middle of the school year. So he did not actually, he actually did not start going to school at the beginning of the school year. He came, I think, in the middle of the semester break or whatever. So we really didn't know each other. He was actually dating someone when I actually kind of found out about him or who he was. He played football. He was a sports person, very extrovert. If you know my husband, and maybe hopefully you'll get to meet my husband, very much an extrovert. He was dating one of the cheerleaders. And I think I had a boyfriend myself, so we didn't even really know each other until after we had a field trip. It was a 9th grade trip until after I came back from that trip. And I think my first conversation I had with him was, I think we were standing outside and I said, "Hey, where's Yasmin?" That was his ex-girlfriend. He said, "Oh, I don't know where she's at." I said, "Oh, aren't you guys kind of dating?" He goes, "No, we broke up last week." "Oh, okay." And then that was that was just pretty much it of our conversation. So until maybe a couple of days later, I was sitting in the hallway with a friend of mine and then another friend of mine. So it was one of my friends. That was a girl and then a guy friend. We were just sitting in the hallway. We're just waiting for our parents to pick us up. And my husband came down the stairs because it was a 2-story school. It was part of a church where we went. It was part of a church. And so he came down the stairs and he looked really mad. He looked angry. And he kind of saw us sitting there and he just kind of walked over to us and he just kind of started having this conversation. Now I'm trying to remember this in my head because it's been a long time. Um, and then my husband and I just kind of started having this conversation, like I think I asked him what happened. And as you'll come to know, my husband he likes to talk a little bit, not talk a little bit, but like he likes to say his opinion a lot. So there was something that had happened with one of the teachers. She ended up having to get pops. This is when you can still do corporal punishment at school. So
That means he got spanked, y'all.
he
That's how old Ellen and Chad
Yeah.
are. I'm just messing.
yes, he got they had to call his dad and his dad gave permission for them to give him pops. So he was really angry that was why he was angry because he had just gotten pops. And I don't even remember what our conversation was about, but we just started talking. And later on, my husband told me that through the conversation that we were having, he calmed down a lot because he said he was just actually going to get into his car. We had this conversation about when we first met and started talking. He was actually going to get into his car, fishtail, and speed out of the parking lot because he was so angry. But because he saw us in the hallway and then we just started having this conversation, he said, "You really calmed me down." And, I don't even remember what the conversation is because he probably wouldn't either. But we just kind of connected there. And so we just kind of started talking back and forth. I actually had broken up with my ex maybe a month before, and him and my ex were good friends. So just through talking with him, I guess he started asking my ex questions about me. And then I don't know if my ex got jealous or what, but he started saying stuff to Chad like, "Oh, well, her parents are really strict and her dad's kind of crazy. So I would watch myself, if you're going to start talking to her because her parents are really strict." And so at first my husband was like, I kind of wanted to back off from that, but I didn't. So here's the funny. So he called me. We started talking. He actually invited me to go to church. I had been going to the youth group at First Baptist Church of Bel Air, and I was involved in that youth group. I felt like I fit in that youth group a little bit more than I did at my own church. So he invited me to Wednesday night church. I asked my parents and I was like, "It's church. It's Wednesday night church. Can I please go?" And my dad was like, "Okay, fine. I'll take you." So he dropped me off. So here's the funny, y'all. I got there and I didn't realize this at the time, but Chad's ex-girlfriend decided that she was going to go that Wednesday night and she had never gone. And then a girl that Chad had been talking to at church camp that summer, she decided to come that Wednesday. I didn't realize it at the time.
Chad, are you a ladies' man?
So he told me his side of the story and he said it was very awkward. He goes, because here's my ex-girlfriend. Here's the girl that I did like in the summertime, but then she really didn't have, contact with him. And she just randomly shows up on a Wednesday night. And then I came that Wednesday night. And I said, "So what did you do?" He goes, "Well, okay, so actually some of the guys were like, 'Dang, Chad, you got 3 girls here at youth group tonight.'" He goes, "But you know what? I asked you to come to church that Wednesday night. I chose to sit next to you." So he sat next to me that Wednesday night. And what's funny is we had a school dance. It was a school event. It was at one of our teachers' houses. And this is kind of where we were sort of kind of talking and had that attraction to each other. And then I went to that and I dressed really nice. And my ex-boyfriend kind of wanted to start talking to me again. And then his ex-girlfriend wanted to start talking to Chad again. So it was kind of awkward. And so we both told our exes, no, we're not interested in y'all. And then it just kind of morphed into this. I think there was one time where it was a cold day and I was walking out with Chad. Now, I was a little bit forward and I said, okay, so I kind of like you. Do you like me? Here's my husband's response. Well, I don't know. I think so. I was like, okay. And then I'm kind of slinking away. He's walking back to his car. And I'm like, I feel like the most dumbest idiot ever. You just told this guy you like him. And he just told you, well, I don't know, maybe. But Chad called me later on and he said, yeah, I have feelings for you. I really like you. And so since then, we started dating in May of 1990, y'all.
I was 5.
She was 5, y'all.
I was 5 years
She
old.
was 5. And I was 14. This is how old we are. This is the age difference between us, y'all. And so my parents knew we were kind of dating. I was only allowed to see him at school. I'm trying to think. God, it's been a minute. Our school ended up closing down, and then we moved to another Christian school and went to Westbury Christian School. And that was Chad's senior year, and I was a sophomore. We had homecoming. That was the first event that I was allowed to dress up to and go to with a boy. Here's the kicker. I remember it was at the Galleria. It was a hotel in the Galleria. Dad said, I will take you. I said, you're going to take me, Dad? What? He goes, yeah, I'm going to drive you over there. Okay, so here I am. I am dressed in this pretty dress. I have heels on. First formal that I ever went to. And Chad is waiting for me at the event at the hotel where we're having homecoming. My dad parks the car. I just thought he was going to drop me off. Seriously, y'all. I thought he was going to drop me off. Daddy gets out of the car. My dad is wearing a white, t-shirt, like an undershirt. Jeans and flip-flops. I am not kidding you. He follows me in at a distance. And I kept turning back and going, Dad, you can go now. I know where it is. He goes, okay, yeah, just go. And I said, Daddy, can I he goes, no, So Chad met me at the door. My dad is standing I don't know, 5 feet away, watching the whole thing. Chad has this corsage for me. My dad is standing there watching the whole exchange. Chad's trying to put the corsage on me. And he's like, is your dad going to leave? I said, yes, he'll leave. Let's just go inside so he'll leave. So my dad stood there the whole time while Chad's giving me the corsage, and he finally leaves me. And Chad was allowed to take me back home, but I had to be home by 10:30 latest. When Chad graduated, my mom finally told me, Chad can come over to the house if he wants to see you more often. And then once Chad started coming over to the house, him and my brother was, he was much older than my brother. My brother was 7. So he would always play these silly games with my brother. Like my brother was into karate and karate chopping. So Chad would play these crazy games with my brother. And so my parents saw that. And then finally one day my mom goes, well, So if you guys want to go out, you can, but just remember your curfew. And I was like, oh, so can my curfew be later? She goes, no, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. And it was 10 o'clock until I was a senior in high school. And then it was 11 o'clock. Chad had to take me home, had to be there by a certain time. So through this interesting years of dating with my husband, with my parents, the way they were, Kay loved me enough to stick with that. And even in fact, when he wanted to propose to me, he wrote my parents a letter. He had a conversation with my dad, but you got to understand Asian culture.
Yeah.
You go to school first, and then once you finish with school, then you can talk about marriage. Well, I kind of broke all the boundaries in that. Like, my parents finally consented to me getting married, but when my husband proposed to me, I was 18 and he was 20. So, of course, they were like, you're too young. You have to promise us that you're going to go back to school, that you're going to finish school. Yes, mom and dad, I promise you that I'm going to finish school. And Chad had to make that promise to them as well. They allowed us to get married. I got married 6 days after I turned 19. I did finish school. I went to school for 2 years. I did not do the 4-year plan that my parents wanted me to do. My parents were very upset with me that I didn't. I graduated with an associate's degree, but then by then I was already 3 months pregnant with my oldest. And I didn't want to go to school just yet. I wasn't ready. And I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but my parents were very upset. In fact, when I told my mom when I wanted to go into teaching, she said she cried because she wanted me to be a nurse. She didn't want me to be a teacher. So dating when you come from a different culture, especially Asian culture where your parents are very strict, that was very challenging for Chad and I. But Chad loved me enough to stick through that. But it was very challenging at times. And there were times where he was frustrated. And there were times where we would have these arguments, where he was like, you need to stand up to your parents. But I was taught I needed to respect my parents. And I basically, in Asian culture, whatever your parents tell you to do, you didn't question. You had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times I didn't question. And so I think at times that frustrated my husband because I didn't. Now, here's the funny. When we got married, so in Asian culture and Filipino culture, it is the man's responsibility to pay for the wedding. Well, in American culture, the girl's parents pay for the wedding. I had to explain that to my mom because at one point my mom was like, well, what is Chad going to be paying for? What is Chad's family going to be paying for? And I said, Mom, in American culture, the parents pay for the wedding. They were taken aback by that because they didn't understand that, but they paid for the wedding. I know that Chad's parents, they paid for our honeymoon and then they paid for the rehearsal dinner. But like that was culture shock to my parents. Like, what? What do you mean we pay for the wedding? I'm like, well, in American culture, the girl's family pays for the wedding. The man's family pays for the honeymoon and the rehearsal dinner. And I was explaining that culture to them. It was very challenging at times with my parents because their culture was so much different from American culture. And that was a struggle for me because I wanted to do things the American way. And it was more of an Asian culture thing where like I had to they're pretty strict on what I wore. I was not allowed to shave my legs. I was not allowed to really go out with a lot of my friends because my parents really were that strict with me. And then I was the only girl.
Yeah.
So that just made it even harder. Yeah. But anyways, I mean, that was a challenge for my husband and I to be dating with the way my culture was. And even after we got married, I had to explain some certain things. So in Filipino culture, you call your in-laws mom and dad. You do not call them by their first name. And so there was one time where where my husband called my mother by her first name, and she pulled me aside and she said, "You better tell him to call me mom." And so I had to pull him to the side and say, "Please call my mother mom. Don't call her by her first name. That's considered they get offended by that." And he's like, "Oh my God, okay. I promise I'll do that." So it's always mom and dad. My aunts and my uncles, my headphones are falling. He had to call them. So for aunt and uncle in Filipino is tita and tito. He had to say that. Um, you had to hug. That was considered respectful. So there was some things that I had to teach him about my culture that he just didn't understand about. So that was interesting as well.
Hmm.
And then he always likes to say, this is his joke with my family. He's the only white guy, and he's the tallest guy because
funny.
they're all short. But anyways, that was the dating for us. And I mean, we were high school sweethearts. We dated for 4 years. We were engaged for a year, and we'll be married 29 years, July 2nd.
Awesome. Well,
Yep.
thanks for sharing your story.
Yes, ma'am.
I've
I
always,
might have gone off the track a little bit, but anyways.
That's fun. This is what this is for.
Yeah.
All right. I needed another one.
I know.
Don't let me eat a third.
I haven't. I'm still trying to finish my first one though. But what were you going to say?
My headphones are falling off.
Okay. See? I'm glad it wasn't just me. I'm like, my headphones are falling.
Well, it was fun to hear all the details that involved you and Chad and what it was like growing up in your home as far as dating.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine it was a learning curve for the both of you because you're from the Asian culture and he's from the American culture.
Yes, definitely.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing with us how you and Chad met.
Yeah, it's your turn though. I can't wait to hear this.
Y'all, we're going to try to convince our husbands to come on and do another episode following this one on how they think we met. And it will be interesting to hear their side of the story.
Yeah, let's see how much they remember.
So if you see this podcast, comment on our YouTube link saying Chad and Jason do the podcast with your wives.
Yeah, it'll be hilarious.
Anyway, all right, I'm going to jump in since you asked me how I met Jason. Well, at this point, you guys know that sorry, we're not really used to this. At this point, y'all know my testimony because it was one of the first episodes we shared. And know that I grew up in abusive environment, lack of parenting, which meant that I could do whatever I want, which meant that I could be in what I would call a physical relationship with a boy. I would not say I was dating by any means. I did have a relationship with a boy from 6th grade and 7th grade who I thought I was going to marry. I just loved him and knew I would marry him. This boy was Mexican, and he grew up being part of the Spanish Cobras, which is a gang in Iowa. He was involved in that. And so you can imagine what kind of treatment and love and kindness I received from that end. But the reality is I didn't know what a good man looked like. I mean, I did with my grandfather, but he was not in the picture consistently.
Now, this boy, was he the same age as you were?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if he was older or the same age.
But then God saved me, and brought me to Illinois, and I came to know the Lord. And in that time that I came to know the Lord, I made a decision that I would not date until I was in college.
Mhm.
I've sworn off boys. Men hurt me, boys hurt me, all of these things.
Mm.
But also, I grew up. The family that adopted me were my aunt and uncle, who I now call mom and dad. He's a Southern Baptist preacher, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom for part of the time, and then she worked as the high school nurse where we went to school. And in that home life, it was really, really encouraged that we hang out with our friends, our
Mhm.
girls and guys together, that we're not alone.
Mhm.
It was also encouraged that if we were to date, we better be ready to marry
Mm.
because the mindset was only two things happen when you date. You either break up or you get married. And so at the age of 15, I'm not ready to get married,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
So it was kind of like the assumed rule that we're not going to date. Now, I'll never forget my dad preached at a chapel service. I believe it was my junior year. It had to have been my junior year. And one of the things he said was, I don't even know how this came up in conversation when he was talking to the high school, but he's like, if any of you plan to date one of my daughters, you better know the Bible from front to back.
Mm.
It was a joke. He was joking, obviously.
He said that from the pulpit?
Yes. And I'm pretty sure that Jason remembered that and made a funny joke when he asked my dad's permission to date me and was like, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I was like, of course he did that, or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact story because it's something my dad told me. He's like, that's when I knew that Jason can date my daughter. So fast forward to high school. Of course, in high school, the peer pressure's there. Like everyone's dating and, oh, look at this guy and look at this girl. And there was a boy who I would consider the bad boy that I really was like, oh, I like him. He's a bad boy.
And I do remember you telling me some of this story.
So I dated him I thought my parents didn't know it. They knew it.
Mm.
And at some point down the road in that relationship, my best friend, Melody, was like, why are you dating this person? This is a terrible idea. And like, she was a good enough friend to say, you need to stop. And so
Yeah.
at some point, I stopped dating him.
So he went to y'all's school too?
Yes.
Okay.
And the crazy thing is, he hated my brother. I'm like, why would I date a boy who hated my family? That's stupid. That just goes to show that I was still very young in the faith and I had a lot of wisdom to learn. So, broke up with him. And at that point, I really swore off. I am not doing this.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. It's too much heartache, too much frustration, too much pain. I'm going to finish high school and go off to college and meet the man of my dreams in college somewhere along the road.
Yeah.
Well, my junior year comes and I was on student council.
Okay.
And I was part of the hospitality committee where I would greet the new people and introduce them. And we create an event and we do fun things with them to make them feel welcome.
Yeah.
And
excuse me.
I mean,
Sorry.
that particular year, Jason was a new student. And then a boy named Ezekiel was a new student. And Ezekiel, if you're listening to this, you're welcome. And then my best friend, Eugen, was living with us. And she was like my sister, best friend. Also, Eugen, hi. I'm sure she'll listen to this and she'll be like, oh my goodness, what in the world?
I remember when.
So junior year comes, we all start to hang out and develop friendships, and we're really great friends. My brother and Jason become really good friends. And so Jason is at our house a lot and my brother's at Jason's house a lot. And then there was a good core group of us that were hanging out. And in that time, I liked Jason's best friend, but he didn't like me. And my best friend liked Jason. But
Awkward.
Jason didn't really. And then I was also trying to, this is how you know high school is just drama.
Right?
I was also trying to.
I would never want to do high school again.
I was trying to play matchmaker for Jason and a good friend of mine who I play basketball with. And in the process of playing matchmaker for them, you hear Dorothy?
Yeah.
You guys are going to hear, no! In the process of trying
Chad's
to.
probably trying to mess with her or something.
Or her brother. So in the process of playing matchmaker for Jason and my friend, I end up developing feelings for Jason. This is the summer before our senior year in high school.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, I had to deny those feelings because this dear friend of mine likes him. My best friend likes him. I'm trying to set him up with this friend because I didn't know at the time that my best friend liked him when I started this whole matchmaking business.
Oh my gosh, high school.
It was just okay, I can't like him. And so I denied my feelings. He and Zeke, who I did like, went away for a soccer camp. And during that time, I couldn't stop. Like, I wonder how Jason is. I wonder if he's enjoying soccer camp. Gosh, I miss hanging out with him. He's my buddy. Missed it. He came home from camp, and then our entire class was hanging out at a friend's house, and he starts asking me a bunch of weird, random questions and being weird. I'm like, he's so weird right now. What is happening?
What questions was he asking
Just
you?
I can't even remember. I just remember why. And then he started getting awkward and weird, which wasn't what he did before.
Yeah.
Our friendship was just
Yeah.
It's like, this is weird. What's happening? And he's like, hey, I heard you like somebody. I'm like, you did? He's like, yeah. Who do you like? I'm like, I'm not telling you because it's him. Like,
it's you.
Yeah, I do like somebody, but I'm not going to say anything because I'm not going to push it or make anything come from it. He's like, really? Why not? I'm like, well, I just don't want to.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that. He's like, can you do me a favor? We're friends, right? I'm like, yeah. It's like, can you give me 3 guesses and strike you're out on the third one? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like if I guess it, will you be like, yeah?
He's being bold for an introvert here.
I was like, fine. So the first one, he threw out a name. I don't remember who it was. I'm like, no. Second one, no. Third one, is it me? I'm like, oh. Yes. He's like, great, because I like you too. I'm like, what? What just happened? And I was like, oh, that's really awesome. But I have to tell you something. In my family, in order for you to date me, you actually have to ask my dad's permission. So you're going to have to go talk to my dad before I can say, yes, let's date. Well, Dad, if you're listening, you know this is all love and joking and fun. My dad was in Cuba, and there was a period, a decade, where he'd go to Cuba on missions.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back from Cuba, he had just this fire for the Lord and was ramped up and love Jesus and stop complaining. Children in Cuba have 1 shoe. You have 2. You stop, super he was up here.
Yeah.
Which I've heard is super normal when you go on the mission field and you see God work in amazing ways. So I'm like, just so you know, Jason, my dad is in Cuba right now on a missions trip, and he'll be there for a few weeks. So you're going to have to wait till he comes home to ask his permission. He's like, okay. What y'all don't know is my dad is 6'4" and was a former football player. So he's a beast of a man.
Yeah, but your husband's what? 6'2", 6'1". Okay.
He's not small either.
Right.
But we put my 6'4" dad in a room after he's been on a mission trip. It's a little bit So Jason built up the courage, and when my dad came home from Cuba, he and my dad went out to A&W for a root beer and sat and talked about life. And my dad had questions for him. And at the end,
Ooh,
my
this
dad,
is serious,
at the end, my dad
but I like that.
gave him permission to date his daughter. Now, of course, after that, when they came home, I was nervous because I'm like, there's no way he's going to let Jason date me. It's not going to happen because he knows because of my past.
Right.
But I guess Jason impressed my dad enough, and my dad said yes. But one of the things that they did on the way back to my house, my dad told Jason, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. When we get in the house, I want you to look very sad and like defeated,
That is so not nice.
so that she thinks that I said no." And of course, Jason's like gonna say yes to his girlfriend's dad.
Yeah, you're not gonna say no to that. Sure, sir.
So Jason came in looking defeated, and Dad's like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Just kidding." I'm like, "You're rude. All y'all are rude. Like, not cool."
Okay, so I am curious. So you were trying to set Jason up with your friend, and then your best friend liked him. How did that awkwardness get? I want to know how that worked out because now I'm intrigued.
That's a great question. Oh my goodness. I don't know why I didn't bring in that detail.
She didn't bring in the detail. I want to know what happened.
So I'm so glad you asked. So man, I'm just thinking about how much drama was involved in this.
Because high school was full of drama. Girl.
My best friend was at a Christian camp.
Okay.
Before she left for the camp, her words to me were, and this is before I had communicated to Jason that I liked him.
Mhm.
And she didn't know I liked him because, again, I was just going to deny those feelings because I was trying to be the better person and let my best friend or this other good friend end up with Jason.
Got it.
Stupid. So Eugen, before she left for camp, she said to me, "Kathy, I want you to pray for me while I'm gone. And I want your prayer to be that if my feelings for Jason are true and real, that God would make that really clear to me. And that if they're not, that it would also be made clear to me so that I can move on from this and focus on a different, thing." And I was like, "Absolutely, I will pray that for you." And so I did. I committed to praying for her while she was gone. It was probably a week and a half, 2 weeks. And so when Jason told me he liked me and I told him I liked him, one of the caveats I said to him was, "Here's the thing. Eugen likes you." And he knew that.
Yeah.
And she's my best friend. I'm going to have to talk to her first before anything gets really finalized.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to ruin that friendship. That's too important to me.
Yeah.
So when she came back from summer camp, Eugen said, "I've got to tell you something." I was like, "Me too." And she was like, "Okay, are you ready for this? I don't like Jason." I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "No. I don't know why I thought I did, but no, I don't like him." And I was like, "Really?" She's like, "No, not at all. There's no, I feel like, oh, we can be friends and I can be okay with that. And it doesn't have to be weird for me anymore." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, how amazing is that? Now let me tell you something." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "I like Jason." She's like, "I thought you did." I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "I could tell we've been best friends for 2 years at that point."
Yeah.
And she'd been living with us for a year.
Yeah.
She's like, "Yeah, I kind of thought maybe you did." And I was like, "I did." And I was like, "You don't like him because," she's like, "No, I really don't. And I'm so glad that you know that you like him." I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "Yes. And Jason likes you." I'm like, "You knew?" She's like, "Yes. Jason wrote me like a little letter to say, 'Hey, I want to ask Kathy to prom or something,' or whatever like that." And I was like, "Oh, really? I didn't know any of this." So that friendship was fine, and it worked out just fine.
Yeah.
By God's grace, he resolved that. Like, she didn't like him, and she was like, "Go for it."
Yeah.
This other friend of mine, when Jason was, they were, in hindsight, Jason would tell you this. If we get them on here to share this story, he'll share this in part of the episode. he probably should have been more definitive to the girl because they hung out all the time.
Oh.
Like, he picked her up and drove her around. He'd go to her work.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you pretty much let her think y'all were dating.
Oh.
Because in high school, when you hang out all the time with the same person,
Yeah.
and she comes with you to,
it's so awkward. Like, really.
Yeah.
You just, ugh.
So she, in her mind, thought that they were dating, even though they didn't have that conversation. Yeah. So he let her know on the day that Jason was going to talk to my dad, and he did, and found out. He told her that evening, hey, I just wanted to let you know. He told his two best friends, which was her and then Ezekiel.
Yeah.
I asked Kathy's dad if I can date her, and he said yes, and we're dating.
Yeah.
And she was pretty hurt and pretty upset, which meant that our friendship was not good at that point.
Awkward.
And it was hard, especially since we played basketball together on the same team. It was tough. And I had to deal with that. Like, that was some of my own doing. But in the end, I think she would say now we're sort of friends now. Jason and her are more friends.
Yeah.
But I think she would say God knew that was going to, God knew.
Yeah.
That was the best thing. Because she's now
but
in
that
a different.
Had to be awkward, though.
It was tough.
Oh.
In fact, if it influenced prom, because hands down, it was looking like Jason and I were going to be prom queen and king.
Yeah.
But some people were mad about how everything went down. And so they started to promote in the hallways and after school and before school, hey, don't vote for them. Instead, vote for one of them. And then the other main couple that was kind of a popular couple, vote for half of that. So they split the two popular couples up. And so I ended up becoming prom queen and Ezekiel was prom king.
Oh, that's awkward.
It was so awkward.
I really thought that high school was awkward. I mean, like, drama. Because I remember when you get done, I'll tell you something I remembered from my story, but I'm enjoying yours, so keep going.
You like the drama? You're welcome.
I know. God.
The drama follows me everywhere I go. Joe Rowan would say I create drama. You're welcome, Joe. I don't, by the way.
We love you, Joe.
Yes, we do. We do indeed. So yeah, we dated. Now, an interesting fact that I didn't know. One of the things that my dad communicated to Jason when Jason was asking my dad's permission to date me was, look, I'm totally fine if you date my daughter, but I have one condition for you. Do not use the 4-letter word towards my daughter unless you absolutely mean it and know you're going to marry her. He's like, what? 4-letter word? Usually when people say that phrase, they think like the F word or something. He's like, why would I ever use that word?
Right.
He meant love.
Yeah.
Don't tell my daughter that you love her unless you know you're going to marry her.
Yeah.
Because which I appreciate. I didn't know he said that. Had I known, I wouldn't have been so frustrated and angry with Jason. I'll explain that in a moment. But my whole life, I was told by my abusive uncles and the guys that I was in a relationship with, I love you. And then they would beat me with a brush. I'm like, this is not love.
Yeah.
So my dad's like, don't do it. And Jason is as stubborn as they come and stuck to his guns. And for 2 years.
Sounds like just like my husband.
For 2 years, he didn't say he loved me. Now, I was like, at the end of first year, when we were graduating from high school together.
Did you ever say that to him?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay.
Our senior year graduation, we graduated together, and we have a picture of us in our little caps and our gowns. Because we were in the same class.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm telling him. I knew then after a year of dating him and him dealing with the drama that is me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to marry this man.
Yeah.
Whatever I can do, I'm going to fight for it and make it happen. And so I told him, and then he didn't not tell me. Instead, he and my family, whenever we hold hands, and it happened a lot around the dinner table when we would pray over our meal.
Yeah.
We squeeze your hand 3 times, which means I love you.
Yeah.
And then the other person squeezes back, I love you too.
Mm.
So he squeezed my hand
3 times
instead of saying it out loud. And I was like, okay. But he also did things like, or no, maybe he didn't squeeze my hand. Maybe he wrote on our senior picture. We got our senior pictures together.
Yeah.
It was like our pre-engagement pictures, basically. He wrote like this really sweet letter. And at the very end, like, I really, really like you, which I think was his way of really trying to say, I love you. But he wasn't going to say it unless like he knew that he was going to marry me. Now, fast forward to the following spring after we graduated. His parents were living in Germany, and for Christmas, they flew the boys and gave me a surprise Christmas gift. I might start crying.
I told you we need to have tissues in here.
We forgot. His parents
put it in the end.
His parents gave me a little passport booklet. I was opening it, and I was like, oh, this is cute. His mom is very crafty and artsy. So I'm opening it, and I'm looking, and I'm flipping, and I flip to the last page. I'm like, oh, this is fun. And I was like, thank you. And his dad's like, did you read the back? I'm like, what? So I flipped back, and I missed a page, and I start reading. I'm like, what in the world? It was an all expense paid trip to Europe to see them and to visit Europe.
Wow.
And like, I'm telling you, I was just like, how did I get so incredibly lucky to land? I am going to cry, to land such an incredible person. Because I came from, like, the night before we got married, I remember.
We can't forget tissues anymore. We just need to put them in the room.
I remember telling my mom, I was like, Jason deserves better. Like, he is just an incredible, godly Christian man who grew up in a wonderful home, and I'm coming from broken to redeemed by God's grace. But like, I feel like I'm giving him pieces of me, and I'm getting the whole version of him.
Yeah.
And so I
excuse me.
I just remember sitting there thinking, like, what in the world? I'm going to Europe, like a dream trip. And it was a gift from them. So we went to Europe. And one of the things is Barbie sent me an email saying, okay, I want you to pick, like, I think it was like your top 4 places. And so it's like, I would love, like, it's hard, but here are the 4 now. And so we did that. And it was just an incredible trip. Well, while we were there on this amazing trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Jason told me he loved me.
Aww.
I was like, finally! And it was perfect!
Yeah.
And I was like, you waited until Europe. He's like, no, I just knew that that I'm going to marry you. And it was on that trip that he actually told his mom, I mean, he's 19.
Yeah.
Just turned 19. He told his mom in the kitchen, I was sleeping, y'all. I wasn't sleeping. I was pretending to sleep. And I overhear him helping his mom clean up dinner or something. And he said, Mom, I just want you to know that I'm going to ask Kathy's dad if I could marry her. And I could just hear I'm nervous, but I'm excited from Barbie because we're so young.
Yeah.
But Jason's like, she's it. She's the woman I want to marry and spend my life with. And Jason's parents loved me and were going to say yes. And my parents loved Jason. But the one condition that they had was that I finished 2 years of college, and that was my freshman. No, that was my fall semester of my sophomore year that he told his mom, or the summer before my sophomore year. So I did finish, like, I literally finished I finished my associate's degree in May, and we got married in June.
Wow.
So, Anyway, it's really quite a special, I tell people, a Cinderella story. It
Oh,
truly
yeah.
is in many ways. In fact, our rehearsal dinner was a Cinderella themed dinner. It was special.
Aw.
But yeah, that's how I met Jason. I credit a lot of it to my brother. Because I'm not sure I would have developed the friendship that I had with him had he and my brother not been friends,
Yeah.
because he was at my house a lot and my
Yeah.
brother was at his house a lot. Um, but I also would credit some of it to Jason's mom led a Bible study for the girls of Jason's class
Oh.
every week in her home, and I went to it, and she mentored me in many ways and discipled before Jason and I started dating. And I kept
Wow.
thinking, I really like this lady. She's really quite amazing. And I
Yeah.
kept thinking she would be great to have as a mother-in-law.
Aw.
Now, there is one little side note. I don't know if it's a side note, and I'm checking our time, that I forgot to say. I'll say it real quick because I'm realizing we're about an hour in. Before Jason, I did like a guy really heavily. My parents and his parents were good friends.
Mm.
And he liked me, but we were both struggling, trying to admit it and share it and figure out how do we do this and it not be weird and awkward and hard, because he was a grade ahead of me.
Yeah.
And so he kind of threw a wrench into me and Jason right before Jason and I started dating.
Wow. This is drama.
Yeah. I'm telling
Drama
you.
Island.
I'm telling you. Joe, just like Joe says, Kathy likes drama. I'm older now and wiser and more mature, and I'm trying to, like, he would probably say you're lying through your teeth. I'm trying not to have a dramatic life. I want easy
I'm the same way.
and peaceful
It's
and
okay.
simple.
It's okay.
Anyway,
So
that's how we met.
So how did he throw a wrench? You didn't finish that part.
Just, he still liked me.
Mhm.
He came home that summer, and he and I actually took some people on a missions trip. We were like the leaders. And there were some feelings shared there and so you have to understand, I was going up against that relation. Those feelings had been there 7th grade, 4 years.
Mm.
So I'm dealing with a 4-year deep friendship.
Yeah.
And feelings to a guy that I've known for a year.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. And even there was a Christmas Eve service and they both came to it, similar to kind of the Chad situation.
Of course.
And I'm like, well, this is interesting. And so I sit down on a pew and I will never forget it. He sat on one side and Jason sat on another, and here I am. And I'm like, well, here we go. And my grandmother is behind me. And she leans over the pew and she goes, sweetheart, I'm praying for you. I turned back and I smiled at her, and she knew what that meant. And then afterwards,
awkward.
She goes,
wow.
Okay, so tell me what you're thinking. I'm like, I don't know what to do. They're both great guys. And I have these deep feelings for him because of 4 years. And then what do I do? And
yeah.
they're like, make a list. Sorry, Jason. So I had to make a list of, like, here's this person and here's this person, and here are the pros and cons of both. And let me tell you, that was really hard because they were very similar. Both very similar.
Wow.
And I was close with both moms. I'm like, this is going to be hard. But over time, it became more and more clear to me that Jason was the better fit for me because the other person was a lot like me emotionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is probably not going to be healthy. I
Yeah.
probably need to have this type of stability, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in God's sovereignty, that friend went on to seminary and met an incredible woman who he is now married to, and they have 2 precious boys. So God knew what he was doing, but there was definitely an awkward period for our families, and
that was weird.
it was very weird for a bit.
Awkward.
Sorry, that was a lot.
No, it was not. I'm going to put it on too. That was not a lot. I forgot to share my little part. So when Chad and I were talking, um, his ex-girlfriend wanted to get back together with him. And my ex-boyfriend kind of wanted to get back together with me. So that was a little bit of awkwardness there. That was part of the reason why his ex-girlfriend came that Wednesday night.
She was trying to win him back.
And the other reason why my ex told my husband, yeah, well, her dad's kind of crazy. I don't know if you want to get involved with her. So there's a little caveat on that too. Wow.
Anyway,
Hope y'all enjoyed hearing our stories.
how we met our spouses.
Yeah. So when we eventually get our husbands on here and we have the How We Met Your Mother session episode, let's see how much their stories match ours. I don't know. We'll see.
It will be exciting. I hope we can convince them. I think you guys need to comment
and
beg them so that they will share their story.
Yes, comment on Facebook, comment on this YouTube episode. And do we have enough microphones? Does your husband have enough microphones for us?
I bet he does. If not, he can borrow some from work. Probably.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like, I think our viewers would enjoy that.
Yeah.
I would. I'm curious to see how much they remember, because a lot of times when I ask my husband some of these questions, he's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Honey, that was over 30 years ago. Like, okay, you're just dating us now. Are you saying that you're that old you don't remember anything? Because no. I remember some stuff, but not, It's like, that was a long time ago. I don't remember all that.
No.
You're right.
We are so thankful that y'all came to listen to our podcast and how we met our husband.
Yes. We hope you enjoy that.
Yeah. We hope that you were found some funny or, oh, that's a cool part of your story I didn't know.
Yeah.
Feel free to ask questions.
Now, Kathy, how long have you and Jason been married?
Oh, good question. It will be 16 years.
16 years. So our 29th anniversary is coming up July 2nd. So we would be married 29 years in July.
Very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Praise God for that, man.
Yes. Very thankful, though.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. And we will see you all next week.
All right, ladies. Bye.
Bye.